David, thanks so much for being willing to spend a little bit of time with us. We've just been in a workshop with you where you talked about how you go about baking custom workshops. Really interested to learn about, again, your journey of getting into this role and then how it's working for you now in terms of the types of custom workshops that you're building and what people are asking for.
Okay. So journey so far, to keep it brief, about, I would say like 5 years ago, I started to do workshops in a more sort of structured way. But maybe 3 years ago, I started to take that more seriously and actually commit to understanding what's really going on in a workshop and how can I do this better. And I think I did the AJSmart masterclass around that time and sort of realized that there was a bit more to this workshopping thing than just sort of going in, doing sticky notes and post-its and stuff that, and voting, those sorts of things. So that was 3 years ago, and over that sort of period, that was the sort of development precipitated on sort of the idea that I needed to do more upfront work to define what we were going to do in the previous role. And that sort of developed over time. So I started off as a sort of cheap or free offer as an additional, and then built out to sort of be a sort of prerequisite to working with us.
So this is the pre and the post work that you told us about, about prior to doing the actual workshop, doing some user research, perhaps looking at forums to understand the customer you'll be working with, and then afterwards to be able to validate some of the findings.
Yeah, so there's definitely maybe not user research, it's hard to do, but VOC, voice of customer research, where you sort of take some time to just go and look where this customer, that the client or customer that you're working with, where they actually spend time, is it Facebook groups, is it forums, is it Reddit, Twitter, whatever, and actually start finding what are they saying in sort of these places where they're not under any sort of observation, so there's no bias. You create that data and it helps you really create a picture of what's important to this customer, and you can break it down in different ways. So that it can feed into sort of the different types of work that you do.
And do you find there's a bit of a trade-off between potentially leading the conversation but also establishing trust quickly through credibility of understanding their customer?
That's a tricky one. So I try and present the work as unbiased as possible. So I'm my background is UX design. So I've done a lot of research in the past, so I really do try not to paint too much of the conversation. But if I am going to paint it, at least I want to paint it in a way that's customer focused. Because that's probably the best color for a workshop to run. If I'm sort of at least if I'm sort of directing people to think in a certain way, it's based on data that I have.
Yes.
Rather than say they're just sort of making assumptions and saying, well, we think this or we think that. It's much better, in my opinion, that you sort of do take that risk to maybe bias people a little bit, as long as it's biasing towards data rather than your sort of trust.
Yeah, and so the baking of the custom workshop, it sounds like you've sort of iterated towards a model that works well for you, and so you're no longer really delivering a custom workshop, it's a proven workshop model that works, but it was a customization baking process that got you to that model.
Yeah, so when you're doing custom workshops, you either you start from a complete problem space, where you're just starting with a blank page, you do workshop planning, and you sort of figure out what exercise you can use. Or you generally start from canvas. There's hundreds of canvases out there, and you break it down into sort of simple steps.
Yes.
But I think taking that sort of approach to sort of keeping it simple and then just running through it and getting sort of structuring it in sort of a simple way so that people can understand it, I think really helps you understand where the value is first.
Yes.
Is this worthwhile at all? Is it something that I shouldn't be doing, shouldn't pursue? You can generally get pretty good intuition on that. It's about how do I push this thing to be as valuable as possible, so that not only can I maximize on customer value, but I can also maximize on what I can charge for that.
Yeah. Wow, it sounds fascinating, and I can imagine that for your clients, what they might try and do for themselves because of the experience, the time you've spent baking this really well-honed exercise. That's why it's worth paying the great money that they're willing to pay in order to get those great results.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, it's something like that's sort of built up over time, so it gets a little bit like, you know, you can speak to prior experiences and the value it's created, the reason you want to do it, that like allows you to sort of increase the prices of these things. It's a process.
Yeah.
It's, you know, with like business growth, with pricing, and you know, I think that like going from like 0 to, let's say, 10 grand, that might take you a year or two.
Yeah.
Going from 10 grand to 20 grand, that's probably like 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, because it's much easier when you have like proof cases. So it's like it's about patience, and unfortunately, I think with workshopping you tend to have to go back to that sort of earlier stage where, at least where I am in my career, when I start experimenting, I experiment for cheap. So I attach an exercise or a half-day workshop onto another process that I'm sort of confident with for like little or no money.
Yeah.
And then I do that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And then I get an idea, okay, this is something I can actually charge for.
Yeah, it sounds really pragmatic, and again, thank you so much for sharing what you have. I think it's been great for all of us to hear about how we might start to create our own custom workshops and build something through iteration that gets to be really valuable and then keep extending it.
Sure.
Thanks so much for your time and
no problem.
all the best for the future.
Thank you, you too.